Hey everyone, Kavemi here, and welcome back to my channel. I've got a bunch of things to do in Minecraft today, so I figured why don't I read to you a Reddit story that made me feel really bad while completing these chores. You're not going to want to miss what happens at the end, so grab a snack, sit back and relax. But before we start, where are you watching from? Comment down below. Anyways, today's story is titled, My Mum Kicked Me Out for Her New Family, then demanded college money for my siblings when she found out I'm successful. To give some context, my mum was 22 when she had me, and my biological father was never part of my life. She said he wasn't interested in having kids, and since they'd only been together for a short time when she got pregnant, she gave him the choice to walk away, which he did. Their breakup was messy, and she decided not to pursue child support, nor did he offer any. They both found it easier to cut contact entirely. Thankfully, my grandparents provided constant support, helping her complete her education and find a job. While I was young, she dated a few people, and when I was around 9, she started seeing James, a colleague. They were together for nearly 4 years before tying the knot. James and I weren't particularly close, but we coexisted peacefully enough in the same household. When my mum got pregnant 5 years into their marriage, everyone, including me, was thrilled. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, but I was too caught up in believing my mum would always be there for me, especially after raising me alone through so many hardships. After she married James, she started pulling away from me, and our relationship began to fray. I thought it was just a temporary shift, and that things would get better. During her pregnancy, I tried to be supportive, but she seemed increasingly frustrated whenever I was around. To avoid upsetting her, I started keeping my distance, though apparently not enough. 7 months after she gave birth to twins, she and James had a serious talk with me. They explained that with 2 young children to care for, they couldn't keep me in the house. I was only 17, so they couldn't legally force me out without consequences, but they emphasized the strain of supporting a large family on their limited income. Honestly, I didn't buy it. We'd been living comfortably, and 2 software developers' salaries seemed sufficient to support 2 adults, a teenager, and 2 infants. It felt like they just wanted me gone. I didn't want to leave and even suggested getting a part-time job to ease any financial burden, but my mum insisted they needed to prioritize resources for the twins, saying they deserved it more than I did. That was the moment I knew I had to go. It was clear I wasn't wanted, and they'd subtly pushed me toward that realization without outright kicking me out. Their plan worked. I left voluntarily, though it felt like I had no other option. I went to my grandparents' house that day. They were upset about my mum's actions, but didn't cut ties with her, since they wanted to stay involved with the twins. At 17, I started working part-time, as I couldn't rely on my aging grandparents for financial support. I occasionally saw my mum and James when they visited my grandparents with the twins, but they rarely asked about me. Their interactions were polite but distant, as if they were content without me around. It hurt to see my mum less stressed in my absence, but I knew there was nothing I could do. I stayed with my grandparents until I left for college. My mum remained uninvolved, so I relied on friends to help me settle into my dorm, as my grandparents were too old and frail to assist. My mum and James refused to help, citing the need to save for the twins' future, so I took out a student loan with a cousin co-signing, provided I guaranteed he'd never be liable for payments. I worked through college to stay on top of my loan and build some financial stability. My mum and I barely spoke during that time, and when I graduated, only my grandparents attended. My mum didn't even acknowledge the milestone. To avoid burdening my grandparents further, I moved out, started working full-time, and have been living independently since. After graduating college, my early years in the workforce were modest, but I managed to cover essentials like rent, groceries, and utilities, while chipping away at my student loans and saving a little for the future. I'd call it getting by on a tight budget. Things eventually improved, though it took time. I climbed the ladder at my company, and considering how little help I had, I'm proud of my progress. Now at 35, I'm in a solid financial position, holding a senior leadership role at the same organisation where I started. About 6 months ago, I landed a major promotion, which I kept under wraps, sharing the news only with a handful of trusted people. I did tell my aunt, who co-signed my college loan when I was struggling, as a way to thank her for her support back then. Apparently, she recently saw my mum and James at a family gathering and encouraged my mum to reach out to congratulate me on my achievements. While I'm sure she meant well, it didn't go as planned. My mum never bothered to contact me. To my surprise, my mum and James showed up at my doorstep recently, insisting we talk. I hadn't spoken to her since starting college, having cut her off completely after graduation, convinced there was no point in hoping for a change in her attitude. She seemed unaffected by my absence, and frankly, I doubt she even cared. Only my grandparents, who knew I avoided talking about her, stayed in touch and respected my boundaries. I hadn't kept up with my aunts much either, so I was unaware that my mum and James had been grappling with financial troubles for years. It wasn't until they showed up and explained their situation that I learned how bad things had gotten. I let them in, naively hoping they wanted to reconcile. Instead, they started by mentioning they'd heard from my aunt about my promotion and how I was among the youngest in such a high-ranking role at my company. Rather than offering congratulations, they seemed shocked that I hadn't shared the news with them. I found it absurd that they expected me to keep them in the loop, let alone share positive updates. They also expressed disappointment that I'd cut them out, claiming they'd only prioritised their twins over me because they had to. They argued I should have been mature enough as a teenager to understand their shifted priorities and not hold a grudge for moving in with my grandparents. I couldn't believe they expected me to endorse their decision to push me out of their home. They even tried to make me feel guilty, suggesting I was wrong for being upset that they'd sidelined me to focus on their twins. That's how they kicked off our so-called reunion after all these years. Without giving me a chance to share my perspective, they went on about how tough the last few years had been. They'd started a business that failed, leaving them in debt, and now, with the twins nearing college age, they were desperate for money. It became clear why they were there. They wanted financial help. They didn't mince words, even framing it as an opportunity for me to make things right by covering the twins' college costs. They added that they were initially upset I hadn't reached out despite my success. I was stunned by their audacity, acting as if they were doing me a favour by letting me pay for the education of 2 kids I barely know anymore. I shut it down immediately, telling them it was disrespectful to think they could guilt me into this. I reminded them, with anger, that they were the reason I had to work through college and fund my own education because they chose to save for their real children, who they said deserved it more. They provided no support back then, and I made it clear they had no right to expect anything from me now, especially not money. I told them I never challenged their choice to prioritise the twins. I simply walked away and let them be. They had no right to expect me to keep them updated on my life, let alone demand my help. Instead of manipulating me emotionally, I pointed out that they could now use the same funds they'd saved for the twins' college, since they'd prioritised those more deserving kids years ago. With nothing left to say, I asked them to leave. I regretted letting them into my home, foolishly hoping they'd come to apologise for how they treated me. When I insisted they go, they grew defensive and tried to shift the blame. They claimed I was too clingy and irritable when we lived together, which stunned me. I was just a teenager trying to stay connected as they pulled away. Hardly a real issue. Then, they had the nerve to say I was no better than them for refusing their request, accusing me of ignoring all the years my mum raised me alone. They framed it as my chance to repay her and my siblings, calling me selfish and ungrateful for not stepping up. It was absurd to hold my childhood dependents against me, as if I'd had a choice. They'd pushed me out of their home as soon as they thought I could fend for myself, effectively cutting me off for the next 18 years. I was shocked they now expected me to help them, acting as if I owed them anything after all that happened. The conversation turned heated and personal, and I eventually warned them I'd call the police if they didn't leave my property. My mum brought up all the sacrifices she made when I was young, claiming she'd only wanted to be a good mother. After more arguing, she accused me of being ungrateful the one time she needed me to empathise with her situation and put others first. They finally left, but her words lingered, leaving me questioning if I'm at fault, if I've expected too much from her, or if she's just manipulating me. I posted about this on Reddit to get impartial opinions, though I'm pretty confident I'm in the right. I hate her for refusing to pay for my half-sibling's college tuition just because my mum and stepdad are struggling financially. As an aside, I spoke with my aunt, who co-signed my college loan, about her sharing my success with my mum. Though her intentions were good, I told her it was wrong and caused me trouble. She apologised profusely, saying she didn't know about their financial struggles or how my mum would react. She admitted she shouldn't have shared my personal details without my permission, and that any reconciliation should have happened without her interference. Since her heart was in the right place, I'm not cutting her out. I'd have been far angrier if she'd meant harm, but it was just a mistake. Plus, without her co-signing my loan, I might not have gone to college or be where I am today. I made it clear her actions weren't okay, as I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I also won't be a pushover. We're on good terms now, and I'm not holding a grudge because I needed that closure. I also talked to my grandparents about my mum's recent struggles. They think I'm in the right and promise to try convincing her to see reason. They've stayed in touch with her to maintain a relationship with the twins, but they don't believe it's fair for her to put me in this position. Their stance feels balanced, and I appreciate their support. Update. My mum has since reached out again, emphasising everything she did for me as a kid, as if that justifies her expectations now. Since our last conversation about 10 days ago, my mum has been emailing me almost every other day, trying to guilt me into feeling like I owe her. She acts as if raising me alone was some grand favour, but she was legally obligated to care for me, so I don't see a point. She only parented me when it suited her, and as soon as I became an inconvenience, she and James pushed me out, claiming they needed to save for the twins' future. Now that the twins are grown, I think they should handle their own responsibilities instead of her wasting energy trying to manipulate me. I ignored her emails at first, but decided to respond a few days ago, laying out everything I've shared here. As expected, she didn't take it well, called me ungrateful again, and I told her that name-calling wouldn't change the facts. I said she'd been a terrible mother and that I wanted no further contact. I blocked her email, but she created a new one to keep harassing me. I blocked that too and will continue doing so until she gets the message that I'm not here to dwell on her issues. Honestly, I'm glad we're having this confrontation. It feels like it'll wrap up soon, giving me the closure I need. I only let her and James into my home that day because I foolishly hoped they'd changed. Maybe even wanted to congratulate me or reconcile, but talking to them showed me they're incapable of remorse or guilt, and I've completely given up on any chance of mending things after seeing how selfish and manipulative they are. Second update. The strangest thing yet happened earlier today. My mum showed up at my workplace. Thankfully, I'd taken the day off because I wasn't feeling well, and I'm so relieved I did. She would have caused a scene or humiliated me if I'd been there. The receptionist called to say my mum was demanding to see me and wouldn't leave despite being told I wasn't there. When they put her on the phone, I was already anxious about what she might do, but firmly told her I was at home. I warned her that if she tried anything at my workplace, I'd take legal action until she was too embarrassed to show her face, let alone send her kids to college. I made sure to sound intimidating, and it seemed to work. She agreed to leave immediately, but only if I met her in person. I reminded her she couldn't afford a lawsuit right now and wasn't in any position to make demands. I also pointed out that my employer wouldn't hesitate to sue if she escalated things, and they wouldn't be as lenient as I'd been. She should just leave quietly. I didn't hear anything more about it, so I assumed she left after handing the phone back to the receptionist. I can't let this happen again. It was too close a call. I've decided to consult a lawyer to explore my options. She hasn't directly threatened me, so I'm not sure if I have grounds for a restraining order, but I want to discuss what steps I can take. For now, I'm hoping this was unpleasant enough for her to leave me alone. Third update. I'm now certain I have grounds for a restraining order. Last week I managed to get my mum to leave my workplace, but this week's events have pushed me to pursue legal protection. A few days ago, when I got home from work, she was waiting outside my door. I immediately told her I didn't want to argue and would call the police if she didn't leave. Before I could dial, she rushed at me, knocked me down, and sent my phone flying. She screamed, blaming me for all her life's problems, and tried to attack me. I was stunned by her unhinged behaviour, but since I'm younger and regularly exercise, I was able to overpower her once I reacted. The commotion drew my neighbour's attention, who called the police and helped restrain her until they arrived. When the police showed up, I decided to press charges. She's now facing serious consequences. I've spoken with my lawyer and requested a restraining order. I've also learned that James has taken the twins and moved in with his parents. Apparently, after bailing her out, he confronted her about her actions, saying she can't keep behaving this way. They got into a fight, which suggests she's truly lost control. I think she struggles to accept that I'm doing well, but honestly, her problems are her own fault. I won't feel sorry for her. The restraining order will be in place soon, and since I'm earning a good income, I'm considering moving to a bigger home. It feels like the right time. I'm exploring my options and hope my mum gets the help she needs to act rationally. She's even been cruel to my grandparents, who've told me they no longer want to be around her. She has only herself to blame for everyone distancing themselves. I'm done worrying about it. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope my video has one way or another made your day a little bit better. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.